So what I'm working on here is day one of the advent of code, sort of code practice problems. I discovered them advent of code just by following some tweets, and someone was saying they're doing it in Elixir, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. So for practice, for code practice and challenges, I decided I would do it as well, and I'd do a little screencast covering me coding the problems. So with day one, it involves Santa working in a large apartment building and riding an elevator going up and down the floors. To signify that he's going up a floor, you have a left parentheses, and then going down a floor, he has a right parentheses. And so the input is going to be a string of these parentheses, and then what we have to do for part one is identify what floor he ends up on after processing all the input of parentheses. So I have my own little Advent project I set up, and I will share that in at the end. Just I'll have the Git repo for all the problems. Uh, so what I'm using here in the practicing is trying to get better at using Elixir, the document tests. I think they're very powerful, especially for problems like this. And so I was challenging myself to document it and use the doc tests. So when I set this thing up, though, I keep on forgetting that it's tests and not tests for the script file. So if you ever get the message test patterns that I'm matching your file, make sure you label your test files underscore tests. And it doesn't have to be an Elixir script file, EXS, but it's sort of the way of the land. You should probably do it in Elixir script. And there's all sorts of reasons why, but I don't want to go on a little monologue on why. So Santa starts on the ground floor, and the ground floor is 0. And at first, I was thinking, hey, I'm going to pass in what floor he's on as part of the function calls. But then I started thinking through it, and I was like, that doesn't make much sense. And it seems like I'll be carrying around a lot of data that I think I could just recursively go through and calculate it. And I knew the input I was getting was a string, but I wanted to use recursive processing and use the head and tail pattern to pull each character out. And I was like, well, I wonder if I just take a string if I use the head and tail pattern matching if it works. And the answer is no. You can clearly see the no match on the right hand side. Um, so once I figured that out, I was like, oh, well, recently I was doing a crash course of Ruby content, and I remember that I was like, oh, I can take a string and split it, and so I was like, that's a pretty good pattern. Let me just reuse that in Elixir. And what I'm doing here is I'm using pattern matching for the parameters and using the head tail pattern matching. But then not only that, I'm matching what the value of the head parameter is. And so for me, if the character we're processing right now is a left parentheses, I want to go up a floor. And if I would do another one where it's the right parentheses, and then I want to go down a floor. And I was thinking at first, oh, I'll pass in what floor I was going to go start and have the starting floor. And I recognized that no, that's not going to be necessary. We can just recursively calculate it up and down and then return the value. So left hand parentheses, start at 1 and then add, and then the other right hand will be going down. Uh-oh, run, I got a crash or error. It didn't match. How the document tests are working, if you look at lines 31 to 35, the example section, that is not only documentation of what the code should do. XUnit actually runs that code and uses that as tests. So since I have a bunch of examples from the Advent day one, I decided that that would be a good pattern to use to at least test each of these. And right now I'm figuring out, like, why is this thing blowing up? And then I notice, hey, look up top, when I do the split by empty string, it's adding an empty string at the end. So I just said, instead of pattern matching to empty array, I just said, hey, look, if it doesn't match any of these, return a 0 value. And then now shorthand, making it nice and clean. And going to return this into a single line using everyone's favorite pipe operator. And I thought, I might name it process chars, but then I was like, I already got process and it's already working and it's private function. It's okay. All right, there you go. Now, since I have all these examples that they gave me, I should add them all and test them and make sure that my algorithm is pretty robust and that it works given the examples before I ask for my input and test against the input that they give me to make sure that I'm completely awesome and I can get past day one, part one. So that seems good. Just double checking all the lines. Now I'll go to the web page and get the input. All right, now I'm going to see, hey, what does it return? 138, and then I will assert that that's what I got, and it's good. There you go. Day one, part one in Elixir.